All right, well, here are the kind of tenterhooks the markets are on. As soon as these protests began, look at that point in the Dow. You can see it on the right-hand side where we just sort of marked an inflection point there. That I'm not saying that was exclusively the reason, but we like to pinpoint odd moves in the Dow because from that movement on, we were downhill. And there are a lot of other factors, I grant you, but this just didn't help matters any. I'll leave it at that. Kadena Group President Gary B. Smith, Fox Business Network's Jerry Willis, and Kingview Asset Management's Scott Martin. So, Jerry, to you first on this idea that, you know, markets generally don't like agita, for an Italian expression of mine. They don't like disruptions, and they don't like, you know, people railing against capitalism. I could see that, but did you see this impact?
Well, look, I mean, this is the kind of protest that goes on at every G20 meeting. It's bigger, possibly. They were expecting 100,000 people. They had 20,000 cops hanging out trying to contain this crowd. And the crowd was, you know, outspoken, you know, vocal and also violent, throwing bricks at the cops. This is what happens now in Europe. This is just the way the world works. It's not that surprising. So if traders were selling off the market on the basis of this, and largely a protest against globalism, capitalism, the same old saws that we see in this part of the world over and over again, I'm surprised that they would be surprised about this.
You know, Gary B. Smith, we've seen it in cities like Seattle that have hosted, you know, world economic figures and the rest. So it isn't, you know, part of just a worldwide phenomenon or over there. It's over here, too. But this feeling that, as I mentioned earlier, that the math may be coming home and hitting the reality here for a lot of folks who just realize, wait a minute, a lot of these guys are running out of money.
Exactly, Neil. I agree with, you know, I think Jerry made a very good summary of what was going on in at least some of the traders' minds. The other thing you're talking about, the reality hitting, I think there's also a general kind of fatigue in the Trump rally. I mean, they're seeing all this negativism, which would be equally countered if we saw some positive moves in health care or tax reform. We really haven't seen anything. We've seen a lot of rhetoric. Add that on top of the fact that the market is almost straight up since Trump took office and was probably looking for any excuse to sell. That's a pretty potent
that makes a lot of sense. And I think, as you said, and Scott Martin, as you said, I mean, you know, you don't go up in a straight line here. And these markets are still up appreciably, certainly not only since the beginning of the year, but by far since the president's election in the first place. But let's just throw in there the possibility that he doesn't get everything he wants this year, that maybe both the health care thing, if it ever comes to pass, is a 2018 development, the tax cut thing, a 2018 development, then what?
Well, I think 2018 is going to feel awful short, Neil, because the midterm elections are in November of that year, and therefore you've got, what, 9-10 months to get some things through, and if you have these things backlogged, that's scary. I mean, Gary B's right. You know, the market was up on these hopes and promises of regulatory reform, tax reform, health care reform.
But isn't this more a lot of the technology leadership sort of kind of crumbling here?
Yeah, well, don't forget, though, a lot of the technology companies are the ones that have those trillions of dollars parked overseas that was promised to be repatriated, that was going to be reinvested in stock, reinvested in R&D, which has not happened yet. And I like the way you put something earlier about folks running out of money. You know what? There's protests over in Europe, and you know what's going on with respect to Angela Merkel, who's up for re-election in September? What they're going to do about Greece with respect to the EU, who is out of money and ready to be kicked out of the Eurozone.
Yeah, I'm glad you left my Italy out of that because they're next. But thank you for that.
Next, exactly.
You know, Jerry, there is this thing on the health care that they agree on repealing, I guess, and they might do that and then come up with a replacement. But ironically, we look back at all the wasted time, right? That's what was originally the plan. So they've wasted all those months, assuming that's the route they go, when they could have done that in the beginning and saved themselves a lot of hardship.
You know, you just don't have the feeling that they're any closer even after all this time, right? We're months into the presidency now. We're really getting seemingly no closer to resolution of that issue. And I think if the market sell-off is about something, it's about government not working. It's about the inability of Washington to get anything done. So this disappointment, whether you're talking about what's going on in Chicago today, the violence there, the disruption there, as they try to pull back from the brink of bankruptcy and can't do it, forced to shut down the state capitol there. I mean, there's this sense out there that government is not a partner with the private sector. They're not up to the task. I got to tell you, they've got to fix that problem.
Yeah, they do indeed. Gary, I mean, are you still basically bullish, though, all these waves notwithstanding?
Well, I am, and for one reason is this. Let's just go back to your previous point and say nothing gets done. You know, as you and I have talked before, then we revert to the Obama years, and during that time, the market was up 125%.
Very good point.
So I think, you know, look, it's not great if the economy flatlines. That's the kind of the downside. But just for investors, you know, I think the economy, the market kind of drifts up then, just not at the rate it could if Trump got some things done.
From your lips to God's ear, that's what I said.
Well, it was also on lower levels, too, guys. Don't forget, we were at lower prices back then. Now we're at loftier levels, so there's so much more pressure here.
Yeah, it always takes the young kid to just ruin our mood. All right, way to go, Scott. Way to go, way to go. Scott making his last appearance here. All right, when we come back here.